Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Margy Bartley joining us here once again. Excited to have her back here as a national board certified health and wellness coach, certified personal trainer, and so much more. She's really here again to help us today with everything from nutrition, health, I should say, with holistic health coaching. She does so much. Let me have her introduce herself. I apologize. My picture just went out. Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Margy.
Yeah. As you said, I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach and certified personal trainer. I'm also a certified group fitness instructor. I've been in health and wellness for about 35 years. I also certified food psychology coach, certified personal fitness chef, behavior change specialist, diabetes prevention coach, quite a few more, but they all fit into that health and wellness holistic umbrella for my approach to health and fitness and health and wellness as well.
Perfect. And how can we reach out to you before we continue?
You can find me on Instagram at Almonds and Oranges Health. You can also find me on the Institute for Integrative Nutrition health coaching platform, and that's called IINWELL, so in well, but two I's, .com. And I do offer health and wellness coaching services on there. And you can either message me through Instagram or through that platform, or reach out to me.
Great. So theories of behavior change is what you wanted to kind of focus on today. So let's start off. I mean, what does it even mean to talk about theories of behavior change? And then we'll get to some of the models as well.
Yeah, exactly. People who have struggled with working with their health, and that can be whether it's trying to improve metabolic risk such as blood glucose levels, manage diabetes or cholesterol, etc., or lose weight, know that there's a real struggle behind that and often feel like failures for not being able to be successful with a certain diet or a certain approach, when in actuality there's a spectrum of behavior change that fits in with mindset, that helps people to understand where they're starting from and how to move forward so they can set themselves up for success. And there are also tools that professionals use when they're working with individuals to be able to assess some of the readiness of the individual that they're working with. Sometimes people think they're ready and maybe really aren't. So there are some tools to use to figure that out and help somebody get more ready.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then break it down if you can, because you mentioned there's the health belief model, the trans theoretical model, theory of planned behavior, social cognitive theory. There's a lot to this.
Yeah, there are a lot. And I have found that most people are probably a blend of at least two of those kinds of theories. Some of those theories overlap a little bit. The health belief model, we'll start with that. I think of as kind of the scared straight model. So someone finds out that they're at risk for something and they believe that they're ready for change because I don't want this to happen. Or it's also because somebody has genetic risk. So I have worked with individuals who came to me and said, look, I know I'm overweight. I'm not at risk for diabetes yet, but my mom or my dad, somebody in my family is struggling with diabetes. I saw what they went through and I don't want to get diabetes. So I want to manage my health and not get that. So they're very motivated just to correct their health and manage and minimize those risks. Trans theoretical model was originally developed as an approach to help people stop smoking, but really blends over into all kinds of different modalities for behavior change. Trans theoretical model has 5 levels. You can be in pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And then there's kind of an asterisk after maintenance, because sometimes people go into either lapse or relapse. And then you kind of have to jump back. The thing with trans theoretical is that while it's listed in a way that seems like it would be linear, like you would only go from contemplation into contemplation, etc., sometimes it's not linear. Okay. Sometimes people might be pre-contemplation and then kind of leap forward into a preparation stage. And sometimes when somebody gets to maintenance and then they have some kind of life event, maybe they lapse, they relapse. So lapse is just kind of a break in what they were doing, but a relapse is almost kind of going backwards. So there are kind of two ways to approach that lapse or a relapse. And sometimes they might jump backwards into preparation phase again, or sometimes they go all the way back to pre-contemplation. So right, it's a hard thing, and that I see a lot of people who are in that kind of a stage where they were successful for a while, they maintained a life event, kind of set them back, and now they're all the way back at either contemplation or preparation. So I think it's important to keep in mind that you might not follow that in a linear fashion. The next model is the theory of planned behavior, which is intention and expectations are planned out, and your attitude towards the behavior is kind of a measured response, and you do try and plan that out and be very intentional about what you're attempting to do. And that is one area where you can see with the trans-theoretical model, if somebody is in the action phase, they're probably also utilizing an intention and a planned behavior with an expected outcome. So that would be one example of how those can blend together. Yeah. And then the last one is the social cognitive, but it's also referred to as the reciprocal determinism theory. And what that means is three aspects of your life kind of come together. Yeah. So there's your personal, there's your behavioral, and there's your environmental aspects. And you are more set up for success if you have aspects in those three realms coming together to support you. Environmental tends to be a huge one, in that environmental means how is your home set up? How is your work and office set up? Do you have access to a gym or facility or some kind of place where you can get exercise? And sorry, all of a sudden I'm blanking on that last factor. It is the come to you. Neighborhood. I'm sorry, neighborhood.
Okay, perfect.
All right. If somebody lives in an apartment in a city and doesn't have access to a gym, it can be very challenging to find access in ways to exercise. In the same way, with work, you might be doing great at home. You haven't bought junk food, processed food. You have just really healthful choices surrounding, but you go to work and every week there is stuff in the break room and they're having birthday parties all the time. And there's, your coworkers have dishes of candy out and things like that. So that's a challenge too. It is one of the areas that we can control the least. So that is where a lot of people can also struggle with what goes on at work in a way, and they get nervous. They don't want to tell people, I'm not eating cake, or I have problems with my blood glucose. And so they feel bad. They don't want to be singled out. So every time there's a birthday, they eat the cake and then they feel bad about that. Mm-hmm. So those are our four main theories, models of behavior change that people generally fall into.
Got it. And now, where should we be going, though? We fall into them. How the heck do we get out? So how do professionals, should I say, use these theories to assess the change readiness? And we'll talk about how individuals can self-assess. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, pre-contemplation it means that it's not even on their radar to begin to change. They're not even considering it. So typically you're not going to see anyone coming in to meet with a professional if they're in pre-contemplation. You will see people come in who are in contemplation. Mm-hmm. And professionals will use motivational interviewing, which are open-ended questions to get a sense of what people are thinking and what they're feeling. I like to find out what their personal beliefs are, what their personal motivations are. And I think last time we touched just a little bit on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which are really key to understanding not only where your motivation is coming from, but how you're going to maintain motivation. It's much more difficult if you have extrinsic, which are motivations outside of you. For example, I'm doing it because my doctor said I should, which kind of goes back to the health belief model. Now, sometimes somebody can have a health risk, but aren't necessarily worried. They are worried, but at the same time, they're not ready to make the change based on that worry.
That.
Some people are. So some people are worried. Their doctor told them, I'm going to get diabetes if I'm not careful. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And some people are much more like, oh, I understand. I know I'm at risk, but they're overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I've done this before. I keep failing. I've had people say to me, well, I guess I'm just going to get diabetes because, I mean, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to do it. So, yeah, you want to use some open-ended questions to kind of uncover where some of that is coming from and what that is falling into. In the trans-theoretical model, particularly in the contemplation and preparation stages, the key element that helps people move into the next stage, and again, it's not necessarily linear, but if somebody comes to me and I can tell they're in contemplation is, well, they're asking more questions such as, well, what would I have to do? And if I don't do it, what's that going to look like, right?
True.
Am I going to be on medication? Yeah, the whole contemplation. And we also call that decisional balance, where people have to put their pros and their cons and decide where they're at with that. Are the pros going to win? Yes. I don't want diabetes. I don't want to rely on medication. I don't want to sacrifice the lifestyle I want to have. Versus if I do nothing, I'll probably get diabetes. I will struggle with my weight. It'll impact me with being able to do things with my family. So sometimes you have to kind of that decisional balance. And then people can kind of start to feel like, well, when you give them education. So I'll say, would you mind if I shared some with you? No, most people, of course, want to know the educational piece. And again, that's key with both contemplation and preparation, is pretty much what they are looking for. They're not looking for steps to take as yet, but they're looking for the reasons why they should take the steps. So that's also a very fine line, because as a professional too, you need to be able to assess what that line is. Are they looking for the information to help themselves decide, or are they in preparation ready to take some steps? Because it's never good to push people when they're not ready, because then they really put up the brakes and say, oh, I can't do this. I'm not ready to do it. And then they can go back to feeling kind of a failure. So you share that information and say, get them to talk it out. Well, how do you feel that your life would look if you don't take the steps, if you are at risk for something, but you are consciously deciding not to take some steps that might help you minimize the risk? What do you think that would look like? And sometimes we don't put it quite as bluntly as that, but that's really, they know that's what's coming across to them, and they can talk it out. And sometimes that's where people do start to come into the health belief model a little bit more, because the more they talk it out, the more they can hear themselves articulate and process the fears that they have on the inside, the more they can realize, okay, I really do not want to get diabetes. I don't want to be at risk for, being on medication. I've seen what that looks like in my family. I don't want to do that. So you just kind of help them walk through that. And then you can say, well, if you do take some of those steps, what do you think that's going to look like? And, individuals that have tried before and not been successful, that's where some of that can also come out for them, where they can talk about, well, I've done this before. And they almost always will start with that too. I've done this before. I've dieted. I've done these things, and it doesn't work. It wears me out, or I just can't maintain it because then we went on a trip, or we do this and that, and then I'm off track, and I don't know what to do about that. So it also helps to back that up and say, well, that, it does sound overwhelming. What if we tried a different approach than what that was?
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you can get people to kind of back that up too with, okay, let's just focus on one step. So again, when the road seems very long, we don't always want to start the road trip. But if we can break that road trip down into little exits, like let's just go down the road to the first exit stop. It's not very far. What if we just took one step there? People can manage that. So that is also, as a professional, what you want to do is start to break down those steps and kind of see where they're lying within both the spectrum of the trans-theoretical model, as well as some of the other issues. For example, again, neighborhood, a lot of people will say, I know I need to exercise, but I I don't live anywhere close to a gym. I can't afford a gym. And so then you start with trying to help them strategize for those barriers.
Mm-hmm. And at this time, perfect time, while we took a pause, remind us how we can reach you. People just tuning in now are saying, Margie, who, what's going on? Fill me in. Who is this lady? Go ahead.
Exactly. Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Almonds and Oranges Health. And then you can also reach out on the platform called InWell, and it's IINWELL.com. And there are many coaches there. And as we talked about last time, you do set up an account. It'll just ask you to put in your email and put in an account. There are a lot of coaches on that platform, and I am also one of them. But you can also just go to Instagram and direct message me as well if you want a direct conversation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, let's continue today with the conversation. I cannot pick up my notes. Unfortunately, that's scrolling through. It's not working right now, the internet. So where did I leave off with your notes? I'm sure you have them in front of you. Yeah,
yes, I have some notes as well, because you never know. Once I get talking, sometimes I forget where I was headed and I go off on tangents because I always have a lot to say, I guess.
I'm waiting for it to pop up, but it's not right now. It's giving me that swirl. The self-assessment, the review family history, generic risk. I'm back. Review home and work environment, develop supportive strategies, begin with the pre-readiness stage, and why these theories are important for professionals to understand and be familiar with to better work and positively impact their clientele. Got it.
Yeah, you got it. You got it all. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important for individuals to know that they can self-assess. You don't have to just wait for a professional to tell you where you're at. You can kind of determine where you're at too. Now, I'm going to assume somebody's listening to this and kind of blowing it off. You're in pre-contemplation, really not interested in health and wellness. But if anything I'm saying today is piquing your interest, you might want to just ask yourself a couple of questions. So you don't have to run and get books on behavioral change models or Google it or anything. You can just jot down a couple of questions to sit and ask yourself. And one of them is, start with family history. What is my family history for any genetic risks? And that includes cancers, blood sugar, A1C, diabetic numbers, cholesterol numbers, any kind of metabolic reading, hypertension as well, all of those that have a genetic risk to them. What's your family history? Just know and be aware of what the family history is. Then assess for yourself, what is my personal genetic risk? What is my personal genetic risk in relation to my family history? Because we know, even though there's a genetic risk in a family, doesn't mean that each person inherits that risk.
Mm-hmm.
So how you can assess your own genetic risk is, what is your most recent annual physical. Hopefully you're getting an annual physical with your healthcare provider telling you about what your risk is. If you are going to your annual physical and your blood work comes back fine, you don't have any metabolic risk, even though something might run in your family, you are probably okay for now. But that doesn't mean, again, that something would present itself further down the road. But if you're managing your health, now, of course, I think everyone knows someone who eats whatever they want and doesn't work out all that much and never gains weight. But I'm here to tell you that a lot of those people were like that when they were in their 20s and 30s. And by the time they were in their 50s, that wasn't true anymore. So sometimes people think of themselves as, oh, I'm really lucky. I can eat whatever I want and I don't have any kind of risk, only to find out later that it does come back. And now at a certain point, suddenly you've got some risks going on. So I would encourage everyone, even if your blood panel from your annual physical comes back very clean, you'll want to make sure you're doing everything you can to keep it that way, which means living a healthful lifestyle. Okay. Then the second question you want to ask yourself is, what is my home and work environment like?
Yeah.
Am I setting myself up to at home at least to have a healthy lifestyle? How is your shopping? How is your meal planning? What do you do for snacks? All of that within your home. What kind of foods do you keep available for yourself? And that also includes, now where it overlaps into work is, when you go to work, are you taking a lunch with you? Are you taking some healthy snacks with you? Or Is your workplace a place where you're relying on vending machines, or if you have access to a cafeteria? Now, a cafeteria can be fine too, but what choices are you making in the cafeteria that helps that as well? Some cafeterias do a really good job of offering a nice assortment or a nice array of healthful things. Some cafeterias don't so much. Sometimes there's a lot of fried foods or heavier foods like that. So just kind of examine that. If you're somebody that knows that in your workplace there are a lot of break room snacks, donuts and bagels and cakes and candy dishes, and that's an issue for you, then you might want to assess, how can I develop some strategies with that? Now, here's something to know too, is sometimes even when we can acknowledge, yeah, my home and my workplace aren't great with healthful support and choices, you don't have to solve that yourself. You can reach out to a professional like myself to talk with them about strategies for overcoming those barriers. Because it's okay just to know that, yes, this is an area where I know I'm struggling, but you don't have to figure out the answer by yourself. It just is helpful to know where it might be a challenge for you, because now you are already thinking in a way to set yourself up for success.
Yeah, and that's what we got to do. Yes, set
Yeah.
yourself up for success. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, and I think there was just one more self-assessment question. If you feel like you're in a pre-readiness stage, this is where I think it's important for individuals to know too. That's okay too. If you are not certain, you feel like, so maybe you're in contemplation or pre-contemplation, and right now this hearing this information is starting to help you move into contemplation. That's really a pre-readiness stage. And it's okay. That's where we start. Everybody starts in pre-contemplation and pre-readiness. Yeah. Allow yourself to be in pre-readiness. You don't suddenly have to launch from pre-readiness to action, right?
Yeah.
It's again to reach out to a professional and say, I know I should do this. I'm not sure how. I don't know if I'm ready. I just know that I should, because that professional can then help you understand and help supply you with some education that might assist you in moving a little bit further down the way, and just be a little bit closer to it. And also, I think it's really important for people to know that there's not a time frame attached to any of that. We don't have to say, I can only be in contemplation for 4 weeks, that I'm in action stage for 6 weeks. It doesn't work like that either. You might be in contemplation for 2 weeks before there's a light bulb moment and you're like, I'm ready for action. Or it might take 6 months in contemplation before you feel like you're really ready to put your feet under you and move forward with a plan. So it's okay. Don't worry about that. Again, reach out to someone like myself, if not me, and let me help you with some assessments, some questions you can ask yourself, and how you can start to prepare your environment to set yourself up for success. It feels a lot better if we set up a support system around us before we start taking steps, rather than the other way. Because once we start taking steps, it can be a struggle to stay on path with those steps if our environment isn't supportive. So I think that's important for people to remember too. Yeah.
Thank you. And we're out of time. I'm sorry. Wow.
Well, yeah, it goes fast.
Margy, that was great. You were so detail oriented. Wow. I went so quick. Okay. How can we reach out to you to work with you?
Please contact me at Almond and Oranges Health on Instagram. You can direct message me if you'd like. And then also on inwell.com, which is IINWELL.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you back here. Thank you. And again, on Instagram, how do we find you?
Almond and Oranges Health. There you go. Perfect.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Margy. Thank you to all of our
too.
listeners and viewers. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.